Paul Walker. It was November 30th, 2013, a clear afternoon in Santa Clarita, California. Actor Paul Walker had just left a charity car show with his friend. They climbed into a red 2005 Porsche Carrera GT, a race car built for the track but unleashed on city streets. Moments later, they sped down Hercules Street, the engine screaming past 90 miles per hour. Then he lost control as the Porsche swerved, tires screeching across the asphalt before it smashed head-on into a concrete light pole. The front end crumpled instantly, metal folding on itself like tinfoil. The impact snapped the car in half, the force so violent it tore through the frame and threw debris across the road. The airbags exploded, glass rained down, and the cabin twisted around them like a vice. Both men were still inside when flames erupted from the rear. The fire spread fast, igniting the engine, swallowing the cabin, and pouring thick black smoke into the air. Witnesses sprinted toward the wreck, but the heat was blinding. Each time someone tried to get close, they were driven back by the roar of the flames. The bodies inside were pinned, motionless, caught in a storm of burning fuel. Within a minute, the Porsche was an inferno. Fire bursting through the windows, tires melting, paint blistering off the metal. By the time firefighters arrived, there was nothing left to save. The blaze burned so hot that only the twisted shell of the car remained, blackened and torn apart by the crash. When the fire was finally out, they found both men still strapped in their seats, trapped, burned, and beyond recognition. Naya Rivera. This next situation unfolded in the summer of 2020 when the California heat shimmered over Lake Piru. Calm, glassy water surrounded by dusty hills and silent trees. Actress and singer Naya Rivera arrived that afternoon with her 4-year-old son, looking for nothing more than a quiet day on the water. She rented a small pontoon boat, packed a life vest, and headed out across the lake's deep, dark expanse. For hours, it was peaceful. The boat drifted lazily, sunlight rippling across the surface. At some point, they decided to swim. But Lake Piru has no gentle floor, and when Naya and her son slipped into the water, the boat began to drift, untethered and silent. Realizing the current was pulling them further away, Naya fought her way back toward the boat, pushing her son ahead of her. The effort was brutal. Each stroke dragged her deeper into exhaustion, the weight of her clothes and the cold biting into her muscles. She managed to lift him high enough for one last heave, pushing him over the edge of the boat to safety, and then she vanished beneath the surface. No flailing, no scream, just silence and ripples closing over where she'd been. Her son, trembling and alone, was found hours later, curled up and waiting, the boat drifting aimlessly across the lake. For 5 days, divers searched through murky depths that offered no mercy, waters clouded with silt and heavy with shadows. On July 13th, they found her body near the surface, caught in the same currents that had dragged her under. Michael Jackson. In 2009, in Los Angeles, California, the King of Pop was preparing for his massive comeback with a series of sold-out shows meant to mark his return to the stage. Behind the spotlight, though, Michael Jackson's body was running on fumes. Years of touring, sleepless nights, and a relentless schedule had wrecked his ability to rest. Desperate for sleep, he turned to the one thing that seemed to work, a hospital-grade anesthetic called Propofol. Inside his rented mansion, the setup looked more like an improvised clinic with IV stands, vials of medication, and a private physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, watching over him. Each night, Michael would lie back, an IV slid into his arm as the milky white sedative coursed through his veins. But this wasn't a hospital. There was no crash cart, no oxygen, and no second pair of hands. That night, things went too far. As the drug hit, Michael's breathing slowed, his pulse weakened, and his body began shutting down. Without proper monitoring, there was no alarm, no warning, only silence as his heart stopped beating. When Murray returned from a brief absence, he found Michael unresponsive, skin turning pale, pupils blown wide. He tried chest compressions, fumbled with a phone, begged for help that was already too late. Paramedics arrived to find him lifeless on the bed, IV still in his arm, surrounded by half-used bottles of sedatives. At the hospital, doctors fought for over an hour, but the damage was done. The overdose had pushed his heart past recovery. The news broke like a lightning strike, screens flashing across every continent, fans flooding streets in disbelief. Brandon Lee. In 1993, on a film set in Wilmington, North Carolina, The Crow was deep in production. The lights were blinding, smoke filled the air, and actors hit their marks like clockwork. Among them was Brandon Lee, 28 years old, focused, and giving everything to the role that was supposed to make him a star. During one scene, his character was shot. The crew loaded a .44 Magnum revolver with blanks, checked the angles, and prepared to roll. The set was noisy, filled with chatter and movement, grips adjusting lights, cameras rolling, everyone focused on the take. The revolver fired once. The bang tore through the warehouse, echoing off concrete and scaffolding. Brandon staggered backward, clutching his stomach. At first, no one thought anything of it. It looked like acting, but he didn't get up. His body went limp and dark red began soaking through his costume. That's when crew members rushed over, calling his name. The blank cartridge has expelled a lodged bullet fragment left inside the barrel from a previous scene. It struck him in the abdomen, ripping through tissue and arteries before stopping near his spine. Blood poured fast, his pulse fading. Paramedics arrived within minutes. They lifted him onto a stretcher, his face pale, breath shallow. He was rushed to New Hanover Regional Medical Center, where doctors worked frantically to stop the bleeding. For 6 hours, surgeons fought to keep him alive, but the wound was too deep. The fragment had torn through too much. Brandon Lee was pronounced dead later that day. Steve Irwin. In 2006, off the coast of Queensland, Australia, the sun was high and the sea was glass clear, perfect for filming. Steve Irwin, known worldwide as the Crocodile Hunter, was in the water with his crew, working on a new documentary called Ocean's Deadliest. Cameras rolled as he swam above a large stingray resting on the sandy floor just a few feet below. When the ray jolted upward, its tail whipped in a violent arc, the serrated barb slicing straight into Steve's chest. It pierced through his wetsuit and drove deep into his heart, tearing muscle and arteries in one brutal motion. Blood burst into the water, thick and dark, swirling around him as he gasped and clutched the wound. His crew rushed to pull him onto their inflatable boat, shouting orders, pressing down on the hole on his chest. Every compression forced more blood out through from the torn fabric. His breathing came shallow and uneven, eyes wide and fixed, lips pale. The water inside the boat turned slick with red as they fought to keep him alive. There was no time for hesitation. They sped toward shore, cameras forgotten, the ocean behind them streaked with blood. But the damage was catastrophic. The barb had gone straight through his heart, shredding tissue beyond repair. Even with CPR and desperate pressure on the wound, his body went limp, the pulses faded, and his skin was cold beneath the tropical sun. Steve Irwin died that afternoon, surrounded by his crew, his final moments spent in the wild he loved most. Kobe Bryant. In January 2020, the hills of Calabasas, California, were blanketed in thick gray fog, the kind that swallowed sound and turned the sky into a blur. High above, a Sikorsky S-76 helicopter cut through the mist, carrying basketball legend Kobe Bryant, his daughter Gianna, and 7 others. The aircraft circled in low visibility, its engines humming steadily as it searched for a clear path through the haze. Moments later, the comm broke as the pilot lost sight of the horizon and began descending fast, nearly 180 miles per hour straight toward the hillside. The sound of spinning rotors turned into a violent roar as the helicopter tore through the fog. Then came the impact. The aircraft slammed nose first into the slope, the force of the collision instantly shredding metal, glass, and carbon fiber. The fuselage crumpled inward like a soda can underfoot. The energy ripped through the cabin, breaking bones and crushing bodies as the explosion followed. Fuel ignited on contact, fireballing outward in a wave of orange and black. By the time first responders reached the wreckage, there was nothing but smoke, debris, and ash. The flames had devoured the hillside, leaving only twisted fragments of the helicopter scattered across the dirt. The bodies inside were unrecognizable, burned beyond recognition, fused with melted metal and scorched seats. And if you've made it this far, you've just walked through some of the most brutal, heartbreaking, and downright surreal ways fame has turned fatal. That's all I've got for today. So maybe take it slow on the highway, double check your safety gear on set, and if you're out on the water, wear the life jacket. Life moves fast, and sometimes it doesn't give second chances. Stay safe out there.